Good morning, third graders. Miss Brown here to read the first and second chapter of our mystery book, The Absent Author. Just as a reminder, we're still working on those two questions that we talked about last week, which is figuring out what is the mystery there and who's trying to solve it. We got a pretty good start thinking about maybe the absent author means that there's an author that's gone missing, and that the possible person who might be trying to solve it, on our back it says that Dink and his friends here might be the one solving it. So we're going to go ahead and just get started. So here is our title page, if you guys can kind of see it. And then it has a map of, I'm guessing it says, "Welcome to Green Lawn, home of A to Z mysteries." So it looks like a map of a little town that might be called Green Lawn. And chapter one. Chapter one. "Please, Josh," Dink said, "if you come with me today, I'll owe you one. Just name it. Anything." Dink's full name was Donald David Duncan, but no one in Green Lawn ever called him that, except his mother, when she meant business. Josh Pinto grinned at his best friend. "Anything?" He raised his mischievous green eyes towards the ceiling of Dink's bedroom. "Let me see what you have that I want." He scratched his head. "I know. I'll take Loretta." Dink tossed a pillow at Josh. "When I said anything, I meant anything but my guinea pig. Are you coming with me or not? I have to be at the book nook in 15 minutes. Dink rushed into the bathroom, tucking his shirt into his jeans. At the same time, Josh followed him. Standing in front of the mirror, Dink yanked a brush through his thick blonde hair. "Well," he asked, "are you coming with me?" "What's so important about this writer guy?" Josh asked, sitting on the edge of the bathtub. Dink turned around and pointed his hairbrush. "Wallace Wallace isn't just some writer guy, Josh. He's the most famous mystery writer in the world. All the kids read his books, except for you." "If he's so famous, why is he coming to dinky little Green Lawn?" Dink charged back into his bedroom. "I told you, he's coming because I invited him. I'm scared to death to meet someone so famous. I don't even know what you're supposed to say to an author." Dink dived under his bed and back out again with his sneakers. "Please come with me." Josh leaned on the bedroom door. "Sure, I'll come with you. I'm usually trying to make you sweat. Usually, you're so calm." Dink stared at his friend. "You will? Thanks. I can't believe Wallace Wallace is really coming. When I wrote and asked him, I never thought he'd say yes." Dink yanked his backpack out of his closet. "Pack my books, okay? I'm getting Wallace Wallace to sign all of them." Josh began pulling Wallace Wallace's books off Dink's bookshelf. "Geez, how many do you have?" "Everyone he's written." Dink sat on the floor to tie his sneakers. 23 so far. You should read some of them, Josh." Josh picked out The Poisoned Pond and read the back cover. "Hey, cool. It says here that Wallace Wallace lives in a castle in Maine. Wouldn't that be neat?" Dink grinned. When I'm a famous writer, you can live in my castle, Josh." "No way. When I'm a famous artist, you can live in my castle, down in the basement." Josh picked up The Riddle in the River. "What's this guy look like?" he asked. "And how come his picture isn't on any of these books?" "I wondered about that too," Dink said. "I sent him one of my school pictures and asked him for one. But when I got his letter, there was no picture." He finished tying his laces. "Maybe Wallace Wallace just doesn't like having his picture taken." Josh squeezed all 23 books into Dink's pack. He grinned at Dink. Or maybe he's just too ugly. Dink laughed. Gee, Josh, you're ugly, and you love having your picture taken. Ha ha, Josh picked up his drawing pad. But just because you're my best friend, I'll draw his picture at the bookstore. Dink looked at his watch. Yikes, he said. We have to pick up Ruth Rose in 1 minute. He tore into the bathroom and started brushing his teeth. How'd you get her to come? Josh called. Dink rushed back into his room, wiping toothpaste from his mouth. You're kidding. Ruth Rose loves Wallace Wallace's books. Dink slung his backpack over his shoulder. He and Josh hurried next door to 24 Woody Street. Tiger, Ruth Rose's orange cat, was sitting in the sun on the steps. Dink pressed the doorbell. Ruth Rose showed up at the door. As usual, she was dressed all in one color. Today, it was purple. She wore purple coveralls, a purple shirt, and had on a purple running shoes. A purple baseball cap kept her black curls out of her face. Hey, she said, and then she turned. So here is a picture of the three of them. They're leaving the house. They're heading to the bookstore to meet Wallace Wallace. Hey, she said, and then she turned around and screamed into the house. The guys are here, Mom. I'm leaving. Dink and Josh covered their ears. Geez, Ruth Rose, Josh said. I don't know what's louder, your outfit or your voice. Ruth Rose smiled sweetly at Josh. I can't wait until Wallace Wallace signs my book, she said, and she held up a copy of The Phantom in the Pharmacy. I wonder if Wallace Wallace will read from the new book he's working on, Dink said. What's the title? Ruth Rose asked. They headed towards the book nook. I don't know, said Dink, but he wrote in his letter that he's doing some of the research while he's in Connecticut. Dink pulled the letter out of his pocket. He read it out loud while he walked. Dear Mr. Duncan, thank you for your kind letter. I am so impressed that you've read all my books. I have good news. I've made arrangements to come to the book nook to sign books. I can use part of my time for research. Thanks for your picture. I'm so happy to finally meet one of my most loyal fans. Sort of being kidnapped. Nothing will stop me from coming. Short of being kidnapped, nothing will stop me from coming. See you soon, Wallace Wallace. You can see the author added it in as a note. The letter was signed Wallace Wallace in loopy letters. Dink grinned. Pretty neat, huh? Pretty neat, Mr. Duncan, teased Josh. You should have that letter framed, Ruth Rose said. Great idea, Dink said. They passed Howard's barbershop. Howard waved through his window as they hurried by. Come on, Dink urged as he dragged his friends down the street to the book nook. They looked through the window, out of breath. The bookstore was crowded with kids. The book nook's owner, Mr. Pansky, had set up folding chairs. Dink noticed that most of them were already taken. Dink saw Mr. Pansky sitting behind a table. A big white sign on the table said, Welcome, Wallace Wallace. But the chair behind the sign was empty. Dink gulped and stared at the empty seat. Where was Wallace Wallace? So that is the end of our chapter 1. I want to go over a few important things we learned so far. So we've learned a little bit more about our main characters and where they live. We learned that Dink, who's on our cover, he's a big fan of this author, Wallace Wallace. We also learned that his friend Josh over here doesn't quite read his books, but he's going to come to the bookstore. And we learned that right here, Ruth Rose, who always dresses in the same color, that they all are going to the bookstore, which is called the Book Nook. And they also live in Green Lawn, which is in the state of Connecticut. Okay, we're going to keep reading chapter 2. Chapter 2. Dink raced into the Book Nook. Josh and Ruth Rose were right behind him. They found 3 seats behind Tommy Tomoko and Eddie Carney. Dink plopped his backpack on the floor. The clock over the cash register said 3 minutes after 11. "Where is he?" Dink whispered to Tommy Tomoko. Tommy turned around. "Beats me, he's not here yet." Mr. Pansky looks worried. "What's going on?" Ruth Rose said. Dink told her and Josh what Tommy had said. "Pansky does look pretty nervous," Josh whispered. "Mr. Pansky always looks nervous." Dink whispered back, looking around the room. He saw about 30 kids he knew. Mrs. Davis, Dink's neighbor, was looking at gardening books. Dink checked out the other grown-ups in the store. None of them looked like a famous mystery writer. Mr. Pansky stood up. "Boys and girls, welcome to the Book Nook. Wallace Wallace should be here any second. How many of you have books to be autographed?" Everyone waved a book in the air. "Wonderful! I'm sure Wallace Wallace will be happy to know that Green Lawn is a reading town." The kids clapped and cheered. Dink glanced at the clock. 11:05. He swallowed, trying to stay calm. Wallace Wallace was late, but it was only by 5 minutes. Slowly, more minutes passed. Dink felt his palms getting damp. That means he's nervous. Oh no. "Where is Wallace Wallace?" he wondered. Some of the kids started getting restless. Dink heard one kid say, "Whenever I'm late, I get grounded." "So where is he?" Josh asked. Ruth Rose looked at her watch. "It's only 10 after, she said. "Famous people are always late." Now Dink stared at the clock. The big hand jerked forward, paused, then wobbled forward again. At 11:15, Mr. Pansky stood up again. "I don't understand why Wallace Wallace is late," he said. Dink noticed that his bald head was shiny with sweat. His bow tie was getting a workout. Mr. Pansky smiled bravely, but his eyes were blinking like crazy through his thick glasses. "Shall we give him a few more minutes?" The crowd grumbled, but nobody wanted to go anywhere. Ruth Rose started to read her book. Josh opened his sketch pad and began drawing Mr. Pansky. Dink turned and stared at the door. He mentally ordered Wallace Wallace to walk through it. "You have to come," thought Dink. Here's a picture. They're in the Book Nook. So you can see they put up that sign to welcome him. Kids are all waiting to get their books autographed for him. Over here you can see Mr. Pansky. He's the owner of the bookstore. Ever since he'd received Wallace Wallace's letter, he'd thought about only one thing: meeting him today. Suddenly, Dink felt his heart skip a beat. The letter! Short of being kidnapped, the letter said, "Nothing will stop me from coming." Kidnapped! Dink shook himself. Of course Wallace Wallace hadn't been kidnapped. Mr. Pansky stood again, but this time he wasn't smiling. "I'm sorry, kids," he said, "but Wallace Wallace doesn't seem to be coming after all." The kids groaned. They got up, scraping chairs and bumping knees. Mr. Pansky apologized to them as the crowd passed him heading to the door. "I've read every single one of his books," Dink heard Amy Flower tell another girl. "Now I'll probably never meet anyone famous." "I can't believe we gave up a soccer game for this," Tommy muttered to Eddie on their way out. Ruth Rose and Josh went next, but Dink remained in his seat. He was too stunned to move. He felt the letter through his jeans. Short of being kidnapped. Finally, Dink got up and walked out. Josh and Ruth Rose were waiting for him. "What's the matter?" Ruth Rose said. "You look sick." "I am sick," Dink mumbled. "I invited him here. It's all my fault." "What's all your fault?" Josh asked. "This!" he said, thrusting the letter into Josh's hands. Wallace Wallace has been kidnapped. And that is the end, and we'll be starting chapter 3 next week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and don't forget to keep thinking, what's the mystery going on here, and who's trying to solve it? Who's the detective? Thanks, guys.